From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 10 o'clock news.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. We begin with an update on a story we first told you about as breaking news last night at 10 here on Q2. Billings police still looking for a suspect after a man was shot multiple times, then run over by a passing car. That fatal shooting happened outside a church in the 500 block of Broadwater Avenue just before 9 o'clock. Police say the 30-year-old male victim died on the scene after being shot multiple times. Police say no arrests have been made, and so far they do not have a suspect description to share. The driver is not believed to be related to the shooting and told officers the victim was lying in the street when he ran him over. The man's name has not been released. The autopsy is set for tomorrow. Man was taken to the hospital tonight after being tased by Billings police, who say he reached for a gun during a traffic stop. According to a tweet from Billings Police Lieutenant Brian Krivitz, an officer stopped a truck that had a stolen license plate in the area of 1403 First Avenue North around 7 o'clock tonight. Police say the suspect, 42-year-old Larry Rondo, ran from the officer and reached for a gun in a shoulder holster. That's when the officer tased Rondo and a fight ensued before he was eventually detained. The officer involved was treated for an injured hand. The search for a missing 22-year-old Billings woman is over. The body found along the Yellowstone River this past weekend is now officially identified as 22-year-old Amelia Brooks. Sheriff Mike Linder says an autopsy completed today found no signs of foul play. A hunter found Brooks' body near Arrow Island Park Saturday morning. Her body heavily decomposed. Brooks was apparently last seen at a home in the Billings Heights on October 13th and reported missing to police 2 days later. Linder says cause of death is pending toxicology reports, which could take a few months to complete. Amelia's friends and family searched for her for 7 weeks. There's now a GoFundMe account set up to help with her funeral expenses. You can find that link within this story, as well as an address to send donations on KTVQ.com. In the battle against COVID-19, 14 more Montanans have lost the fight. The state's death toll due to COVID-related illness now stands at 733. Now, county health authorities reported more than 950 new cases today. More than 15,000 cases remain active across the state. COVID-19 cases continue to rise across our state, especially here in Yellowstone County, and data compiled by MTN shows an alarming new trend when it comes to those deaths. Numbers show the impact of the virus hitting harder in Yellowstone County. 28 of the total 122 victims have died within the last month. Well, across the state, 320 people have died from COVID-19 related complications in November. That's compared to 397 deaths from March to October during a 7-month span. November was by far the worst month for the pandemic in Montana. 29,000 cases were reported. More than 300 Montanans died from COVID complications. The first COVID-19 death in Montana was reported on March 26th. By the end of the summer, Montana was seeing exponential growth in COVID cases and deaths. 181 deaths were reported at the beginning of October, 397 at the beginning of November, 730 deaths as of December 1st. 95% of those deaths occurred in individuals over the age of 50. Most had underlying health conditions like diabetes or health disease. However, a lot of COVID risk factors are common in conditions in Montana.
We estimate that about 57% of Montana adults have one or more chronic condition that they are actively managing.
Montana cities and towns have been on the front lines responding with law enforcement, first responders, and public health workers. But within the last week, the Bullock administration decided to greatly limit its remaining share of federal coronavirus relief funds. MTN's Mike Dennison has more.
The administration had agreed cities and counties would get $300 million in federal CARES Act money this year to help cover COVID-19 related expenses, including law enforcement salaries, contact tracers, and fill-ins for essential employees not able to come to work. But now the Bullock administration says it will be only $200 million, and most of that is already spent. The extra $100 million instead will go to grants to impacted businesses and enhanced unemployment benefits for those out of work. Missoula County Commissioner Dave Strohmeyer says the change caught local governments by surprise.
I think there's frustration across the state from local governments in terms of we had been working under a certain set of assumptions for quite some time, And to, on a dime, make a course correction here is not easy.
Cities and counties can still request reimbursements through December 31st, but for only limited expenses, and likely only up to $10 million statewide. The Bullock administration says local governments weren't going to spend all of the $300 million anyways, and that much of that money paid for salaries already in city and county budgets. Strohmeyer said the state certainly calls the shots on how to allocate this money, but that he hopes enough remains to cover vital COVID-19 costs for cities and counties this year.
I guess the proof will be in the pudding as far as how this plays out in the next few weeks.
Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
So far this year, the Bullock administration says it's awarded $919 million of the state's $1.25 billion in federal COVID-19 relief funds. Vaccine advisors to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention voted 13-1 today to recommend that healthcare workers and long-term care facility residents be first in line for a COVID-19 vaccine. Both groups will lead off what is now being called Phase 1 of the CDC's coronavirus vaccine distribution plan. The CDC says long-term care residents account for nearly 40% of the COVID-19 deaths, while more than 240,000 healthcare workers have been infected with the virus. 858 of those workers have died. The single vote against came from Dr. Helen Talbot of Vanderbilt University, citing concerns that the vaccine had not been studied in residents of long-term care facilities. Major ally has broken with President Trump. Attorney General William Barr is saying there is no evidence that fraud impacted the race for the White House. Skylar Henry reports from Wilmington, Delaware.
The Department of Justice has found no evidence of widespread voter fraud in the 2020 presidential election. In an interview Tuesday, Attorney General William Barr told the Associated Press, "To date, we have not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected a different outcome in the election."
It's going to be a very hard thing to concede because we know there was massive fraud.
The finding directly contradicts President Trump's ongoing claim that the election was stolen. The Trump campaign's legal team responded in a statement, saying, "With all due respect to the Attorney General, there hasn't been any semblance of a Department of Justice investigation." Barr, who was at the White House on Tuesday, is considered one of the president's most loyal cabinet members. Last month, he gave U.S. attorneys the go-ahead to investigate what he called substantial allegations of voting irregularities. Here in Wilmington, Delaware, President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris continue to set up their administration. On Tuesday, they unveiled their economic team.
I know times are tough, but I want you to know that help is on the way.
Former Fed Chair Janet Yellen is Biden's nominee for Treasury Secretary. She said quick action on the pandemic will be essential.
It's an American tragedy, and it's essential that we move with urgency.
If confirmed, Yellen will be the first woman in history to lead the Treasury Department. She was also the first female to lead the Federal Reserve. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Wilmington, Delaware.
Also Tuesday, Attorney General Barr appointed U.S. Attorney John Durham as a special prosecutor. Durham has been looking into the origins of the Trump-Russia investigation. The designation makes it harder to remove him from office before his work is completed. MSUB is still working to determine the source of yesterday's water leak and fix it. During the process, water remains off and restrooms are out of use at McMullen Hall, the PE building, Cecil Hall, Rimrock Hall, and the Student Union. Porta potties are in place and bottled drinking water is being supplied at the affected buildings. Employees who work in those buildings are asked to work from home tomorrow if possible. And turning to Chief Forecaster Bob McGuire, on the first day of December, we're looking back and forward tonight.
Well, you know, I was thinking, we were looking at October, and October seemed a pretty cold month for us. And was November any better? Well, yeah, it kind of was. Let me show you. We did some look back, and here's what we found in November. As you can see, the highest temperature in November was 74 degrees. That was on the 3rd. The average high, though, for the month is 49.6 degrees. The lowest temp was 12 degrees set on the 9th. And as you can see there, the average temperature there is 26.3. So actually, we're a little bit cooler than that. But as far as rainfall, we had the 20 23rd driest rainfall month of November since records have been kept. We had 3,700s. Snowfall, we had 3.8 inches of snow. In October, you might remember we had almost 20 inches of snow. Now, as we look ahead, we're going through the next 8 to 14 days. It should be warmer than average across much of the Central Plains and eastern Montana. It could be a little warmer than average, but what about precipitation? Well, it looks like we may be leaning a little wetter, probably more rain mixing with snow as we head into the middle part of December. Russ?
All right, thank you, Bob. A dozen participating counties spanning Montana from east to west officially formed the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority today. Missoula County Commissioner Dave Strohmeyer said 12 counties will serve as founding members of the startup authority, which looks to restore passenger rail service to the state's southern tier. The Missoula Current reports it's the first such rail authority ever established in Montana. The authority now has counties representing urban centers and rural communities stretching from the Idaho border all the way to North Dakota. The group plans to hold its first meeting in coming weeks. Amtrak ran the North Coast Hiawatha across Montana's southern tier from 1971 until 1979. In Billings, the local food bank served hundreds of people today with its Farm to Trunk event. No questions asked. Everyone who showed up at the food bank got a box of dairy, produce, and protein. Q2's Mitch Legge shows us more in tonight's Rebound Report.
Staff at the Billings Food Bank have seen a steady stream of cars coming through to pick up a free food box at the Farm to Trunk event. Staff say that they've been able to help out 400 Billings area residents so far on Tuesday. The Farm to Trunk events use food donated by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the food bank's stock, and a program called FarmLink, which connects unsold crops on area farms to places that need them, like the food bank. Billings volunteers have brought Farm to Trunk boxes to the Billings area and surrounding communities several times over the past year, and they've always had a high turnout. Thanks to a $25,000 donation received Tuesday from the Delta Dental Insurance Company, the food bank can keep its stock full to help the community as it heads into another uncertain year amid the COVID-19 pandemic.
It certainly helps us acquire a lot of food. I mean, we're buying food now because, food's starting to get short. Some items are getting to be scarce or at least rationed. And so we're trying to stock up as much as possible because we're not really sure what the new year is going to bring. And, I think we're still going to have a lot of issues that have to be dealt with. And so we're trying to get our larders stocked so we're prepared.
Shandy said the Billings Food Bank is always looking for more volunteers and donations. For more information, find this story at ktvq.com. Reporting in Billings, Mitch Legge, MTN News.
Thank you, Mitch. The Farm to Trunk event is on again for the next 2 days at the food bank. People can receive a food box from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. at 2112 4th Avenue North. Still to come on the MTN 10 o'clock news here on Q2. Lessons well beyond the classroom. We look back on the life of one of Montana's great teachers, and we'll hear what the Billings education system has done to remember his legacy. And in sports, chasing titles, we're going to meet two Rocky runners looking to put the Battling Bears cross-country team on the national map.